The longest-standing wife of King Henry VIII was actually his first wife, Katherine of Aragon. Her story is one which is captivating, as she was a princess belonging to one of the most powerful European dynasties and ruling families in the 16th century. She came from Spain not to marry Henry, but his brother, Prince Arthur, who tragically died following their marriage inside of Ludlow Castle. But Katherine would then be coerced into marrying her brother-in-law due to the huge dowry payment. She was initially happy with Henry VIII, and the pair would enjoy the company of each other. But the king's fatal flaw was his wandering eye, and Katherine's chambers soon became a hunting ground for the Tudor King, who would try to make mistresses of the Queen's ladies. Henry even sired an illegitimate son with one of Katherine's ladies, and this boy was touted to be a future King of England. But Katherine would be a brilliant queen in her own right, and she would serve well as a regent when her husband was away, dealing with the Scots at the Battle of Flodden. She was well liked, but she died in obscurity following the breakdown of her marriage as the king tried to force through divorce and annulment, and he would then virtually keep his wife under house arrest. But her burial site is one which is rather subdued for a woman of such importance. You would expect for a queen as influential as Katherine of Aragon to be buried inside of Westminster Abbey or in some ornate and huge Spanish cathedral. However, she is actually buried inside of Peterborough Cathedral, a small town in the middle of England with very little celebration or marking commemorating the important person that lies beneath the stone flooring. After many years of suffering at the hands of her husband, Katherine died inside of Kimbolton Castle on the 7th of January 1536 at the age of 50. It's believed that the king chose Peterborough Cathedral himself as the final resting place of his first wife, and this is possibly for two reasons. This was relatively close to her place of death, meaning that a huge procession would not have to take place with her being sent to the other places such as Westminster Abbey or St. Paul's, and she being a hero to so many women could be moved to be buried rather quickly and discreetly to make sure that those who loved her did not make a grand spectacle of her funeral procession. Henry would order that Katherine of Aragon should be buried with all the honours of a dowager princess of Wales, meaning that she was demoted to the wife of the deceased Prince of Wales, as in the wife of his brother, Arthur. This was a huge disgrace when compared to the work she'd done as queen. For her funeral there was a large state procession with many nobles and ladies there to take part. There was a lot of black cloth provided for the women to wear mourning veils and other garments, and Henry VIII would bemoan the cost that he spent on his first wife's funeral. And because of this, he made sure that he did not spend a lot of money on the memorial or the burial. Katherine's not necessarily buried in a grand and ornate tomb, but simply under the floor. An account on her burial arrangements is said to be the right excellent and noble princess the Lady Katherine, daughter to the right high and mighty Prince Ferdinand, late King of Castile, and late wife to the noble and excellent Prince Arthur, brother to our sovereign Lord King Henry VIII. She had in this been demoted to the sister-in-law of Henry VIII, which showed her fall. What is also interesting is that the king and his queen would celebrate Katherine's death distastefully. Her body had been embalmed and had been prepared with spices, and had been wrapped in a thick wax cloth known as a cerecloth, which aimed to preserve the remains in a good state. The body was then placed inside of a coffin and a chest, and it was laid in a canopy in state for a number of days. It was also enclosed in lead-lined coffin, but this was then brought into the chapel at Kimbolton Castle, where it lay before the altar surrounded by many burning candles. There were 4 banners around the coffin, including the arms of England and Spain, which also had gold standards. There were 2 weeks of mourning, which allowed the clothing for the procession to be made, and then the funeral would then take place. The chief mourner was Eleanor Brandon, the Countess of Cumberland, and the daughter of the king's sister. The procession occurred on the 29th of January 1536, and also present were the Duchess of Suffolk, Catherine Willoughby, and dozens of other noble ladies and many of the Queen's ladies who had served her. The hearse rested at Sawtry Abbey, and the coffin was then taken in and was surrounded by more candles. The following day the procession continued and the mourners left, and they arrived at Peterborough Cathedral, or Abbey as it was known back then. The coffin of Katherine of Aragon was taken into the large cathedral, and 1,000 burning candles were lit, and there were 600 women who were given black robes to act as mourners, and they prayed for the former queen. The walls were decorated with large banners, and John Housie preached the funeral sermon. He had replaced John Fisher as the Bishop of Rochester, who had been executed for being loyal to Katherine in the face of Anne Boleyn. During the sermon he said that at the end of her life, Katherine had acknowledged that she was not the rightful Queen of England, and because of this Henry VIII twisted the knife in. This was clearly a message to be said from the king, as Katherine never said this and it was not believed. She was staunch in her commitment that she was the true wife of the king and the rightful Queen of England. She was then lowered into her tomb in the abbey. The funeral service was believed to have been dishonourable and disrespectful, and the imperial ambassador was advised not to attend. He said that Katherine was not buried as a queen, but Henry VIII said that he would erect a finer tomb for Katherine, and he did deliver on this, and he did give her a good tomb. Nothing today remains of this, though, due to the fact Oliver Cromwell's parliamentarian soldiers smashed it up and destroyed it during the English Civil War. There was some debate, though, as to whether Katherine lay alone in her grave, and some believed that Catherine Willoughby had also been buried there. The tomb was broken into in 1777 to confirm this, and the coffin was then actually drilled into, and inside of this a curious man found things including what he thought smelt like embalming fluid, and the part of her robes disintegrated when they were exposed to the air. Her coffin was then buried and was not disturbed again. Today, the present tomb that marks the burial site of Katherine of Aragon was made during a renovation of Peterborough Cathedral during the Victorian period. Queen Mary of Teck, the wife of George V, ordered the tomb to be decorated with the symbols of queenship, meaning she is now accepted as a rightful queen. But Henry VIII had an important role in the burial of his first wife. He paid for it, but he would meddle to ensure that her funeral ceremony was disrespectful, and it discouraged the legacy of his first wife. Thank you for watching, and as support, please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.